Nice. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Technical Friday live stream here at the Wized channel. Today, we are still doing Supabase, all Supabase in Wized. So we are doing the fourth part. It's been already 3 parts last Friday and the other. Today, we're doing the fourth part, and stay tuned because we are actually going to be planning to do a fifth one. So today, we are talking all about Supabase edge functions. In Supabase, there's multiple things you can do. We've seen a bunch of them already. Everything related to database and authentication, for example. Now it's the turn to talk about edge functions. So in today's live streams, I have quite a lot of things planned to talk about. We'll do an overview of what are edge functions so we can see exactly how it works, the use cases that they have, etc. And then today we're going to get a bit codier. Today we're getting a bit technical because to create edge functions, there's no code, there's no code builder for it. We have to dive into actually writing them ourselves. So I'm going to walk you through on how to set up the development environment because we cannot do it in Supabase's dashboard. We have to do it in our own local development environment. I'll walk you through it, don't worry. And then we'll see how to create functions, how to deploy the functions, how to use those functions in Wized. And then we'll see other things related to functions, how to use dependencies, how to use secrets, how to query the database from functions, how to implement authentication in the edge functions, how to implement routing. There's a lot of things that we can do. So, oh yeah, Demetrius is asking, hey Demetrius, are we also going to see these crones things? We can, yes, in Supabase. You can implement cron jobs as well, I think. I want to say that you can do it. But if not, don't worry, we can talk about what is cron because I remember Demetrius that you asked about cron jobs in the last live stream. Oh, there might not be cron jobs in Supabase. We can still talk about the concept, don't worry. So as I mentioned, I've got this outline, and today I want to start right away. And the reason is because today's live stream will be 5 minutes shorter. So instead of being a whole hour, it's going to be 55 minutes, 5 minutes before the next hour. I'm going to end the live stream because I got to jump off. All right. So I think that it's time to dive into it. What do you think, guys? Nice. All right. Thank you, Gabe. Demetrius asked about poking Supabase for the inactivity on the free plan. Right. Yes, I remember. Correct. All right, we can check that if we have enough time, Demetrius. And if not, don't worry, we can still tackle that on the next live stream. Or if you really need that ASAP, just send me a DM and we can try to tackle it together. So, Supabase adds functions. What are they? Let's go to the dashboard for the project that we've been using for all these different live streams. And in the dashboard, you are going to see that there is one section called edge functions, like that, right? So let's open that. And right now, I don't have anything as expected. But essentially, let's see what are edge functions. Usually, when you're doing things with Supabase, for example, in Wized, but other than Wized as well, everything is happening directly from the browser. So when we are initializing the Supabase client, that's happening on the browser. When we are querying the database, that's happening on the browser as well, and it's secure thanks to row-level security, which if you want to know about that, check the second part of the live stream. We talked about it, etc. So everything that's happening in Wized, it's happening on the browser. But there is some times where the business logic of your application might not be a good fit for the front end because maybe there is some private logic in there, maybe there are some secret keys, maybe you're interacting with services that are not supposed to be exposed on the front end, etc. So in those cases, what you want to do is move that logic out of the front end, so not put it directly, for example, in Wized, and put it on a function. It's essentially a server. Edge functions are just functions, server functions that run on demand. So we define the function, we add the logic, we deploy that function. But as opposite as a traditional server, instead of being constantly running, it will just be on demand. you've heard about this, maybe also as concepts like lambda functions, Cloudflare workers. It's also a similar concept where it runs server logic on demand. Um, Vercel functions, all these services work very similarly. We've got a function deployed and we consume that function, and only for the period that that function is running, there's an instance that spins up, runs the logic, and then once the server returns the response, that instance is killed, right? The particularity of Supabase Edge functions is that they run on Dino, right? They don't run on Node, they run on Dino. Dino is another JavaScript runtime that it's not Node, but it's by the founder of Node.js. And although there are many similarities because it's still JavaScript, there are some APIs that might be different from Node.js environments. All right. So if you're used to AWS Lambda functions or Vercel functions, this might be a bit of a different experience. Same as if you're used to Cloudflare workers as well. Cloudflare uses their own runtime that is called workerd, and that also has different APIs. So in this case, we're going to be working with Dino, not with Node. Keep that in mind. All right. So what I want to do, first of all, is show you how to set up the development environment, because we need to create the functions ourselves in here. If we go to Edge functions and we try to deploy a new function, you're going to see that the only option as of today, maybe this changes in the future, but as of today, there is only one option, and it's creating the Edge functions using the CLI locally, right? We can click on this. It's going to show us some example of how to create a function. But first of all, we need to set up the environment. So let's do that. If you're following along and I missed something in today's live stream, or there's something that you want to dive deeper, Supabase has a pretty nice documentation. So you can check a lot of things from here, from how do you set up and how to actually implement some specific logic in the functions, right? So let me, Gabe, can you stop sharing the screen for a second? Because I want to pull up the terminal for a second, like that. All right, great, thank you. You can share again, Gabe. Cool. So first of all, what I want to do, and here's where I'm getting a bit codier. All right. So if you're not a programmer, or you don't know how to code, don't worry, you can still follow along. But maybe you want to expand on some of the things that I'm gonna do right now. So what I'm doing now is I just open the terminal in my repositories folder, because it's where I store all the code. And in that case, I'm gonna create a new folder just for the sake of having a dedicated project for it. Let's do make it there. Let's call it with stream Supabase, for example. All right. And in here, let's move to that with streams. Oops, not server, stream Supabase. Great. And in here, the first thing that I want to do is initialize a an npm project, because we're going to be installing some dependencies. So either I open it already with VS Code, that is fine, like that. But before doing anything else, I want to install initialize an npm project. So in my case, I'm using pnpm, but everything that I'm doing, you can also do it with npm as well. Keep that in mind. If you want to use pnpm, just go ahead and look for pnpm in Google. I'll just do a quick pnpm, and you're going to see here how to use it, but it's definitely not required, just because I like using it. Great. So let's do pnpm init. And in that case, what's going to happen is that it will create a package.json. So here we can already start installing dependencies. Now, to start, we need the Supabase CLI. You've got two options. You've got the option of installing it globally, or just on the project that we are working on. Now, because I prefer just to have things organized, I'm going to install it in this project. So what I'm going to do is, let's go to Supabase's documentation. Let's get started. And here you're going to see that, first of all, we need the CLI to run Supabase init. but we don't have the CLI yet. So let's open this, check out the CLI docs. And in here, we need to add the Supabase. As I mentioned, you can install it either with npm, with yarn, with pnpm, or with brew. Up to you. I'm going to use pnpm. So let's do pnpm Supabase save dev. I can just copy and paste this like that. Good. Great. Now, because I'm using pnpm v10, I also need to approve builds. This is a new thing from pnpm. If you're using npm, you don't need to do this. That. Let's approve builds for Supabase. Yes. All good. Okay, let's clear. And now we already have everything. Not actually not everything, because you're gonna see that we need one extra thing. But let's try to run pnpm Supabase for now. Let's see what happens. And in here, we can see all the commands that the CLI allows to do. So we can interact with the database. We can interact with functions. We can interact with secrets, with the domains. We can manage pretty much everything from our Supabase project directly from the CLI, including, as I mentioned, creating new functions and deploying those functions. So what I want to do is, let's go back here. I'm not gonna run Supabase in it yet, because we're gonna need one extra thing to do that. But let's skip one step and let's jump into actually creating an edge function, right? So in Supabase, they have templates that we can use. So let's do that. I'm gonna close the terminal and just use the one from VS Code. All right. If you check the package.json, you're gonna see that I have the CLI here ready. Let's open the terminal in VS Code and let's do Supabase. Actually, pnpm, because it's local. So pnpm Supabase. And I want to do functions, new hello world. Let's do the same thing. Let's create a hello world function. So Supabase functions create. Sorry, not create. Sorry, new hello world, like that, right? Okay, 1 second. Fail to switch pnpm to v7. What are you saying here? Now let's remove this. Yeah, let's do that again. That's the thing from pnpm. All right, so now that I've done that, you're gonna see that Supabase automatically has done some scaffolding and has created a functions folder. So we've got Supabase functions, hello world, we've got our function, and by default, what it's gonna do is that it will inject some, let me zoom out a bit, it will create a very basic template for a function. And in this template, you can see that it's using Dino. All right. And we're also importing some type definitions. We're doing some console login. Then there's the endpoint serving. And in this case, it's just looking for a name in the payload, and it's returning a response saying hello to that name. Very basic function, but enough for now. Nice. Now, I still want to finalize setting up a bunch of things. So here, 1 second, because I remember that there was a way to ask it. Oh, actually, we need to do Supabase in it, yeah. Although it already exists. Okay, let's hear me out. Let's remove what Supabase created when we created the function, because I actually didn't want to skip this step. I want to run first pnpm init, because the CLI is going to prompt me if I want to update my VS Code settings to support Dino. It's going to inject some additional configs to make sure that our experience when writing code here matches the Dino experience. So let's say yes. And in that case, again, it will generate this Supabase folder, but it also will generate this VS Code folder with some settings for Dino. So we've got here the settings for Supabase functions. We also have some enabled APIs for Dino. And then also it will recommend us the Dino extension that probably I have here already installed. Yes. And that's only for a better experience here, right? So now that I've done that, let's clear this and let's do this again. Let's create the Supabase function, hello world. And now we've got everything set. Nice. Great. Let's restart TypeScript. Let's see if the type definitions are there. It should be. Might take a while to restart the language server. It's fine. Great. So now what I want to do is deploy this because I want to test it. Now, to deploy this, we need to do an additional step. I know that this is getting a bit cumbersome, but once we're done with the initial setup, then we can do things very fast. To use the CLI to deploy things or to run it locally, not only we need the CLI, we also need Dino. Dino, my God, Docker. We need, all right, because in the local CLI for Supabase creates an instance, a local instance that allows us to test everything locally in our machine. So to do that, you will need to install Docker, which is what the Supabase CLI uses. So just go ahead and Google and look for Docker desktop. You can look for that. And in here, you're going to see an option that says install Docker desktop. Choose your own operating system, Mac, Windows, or Linux, and follow the instructions in there. In my case, I already have it installed. What I need to do is spin it up. So I'm going to open Docker. I'm going to put my password for a second, like that. And now that Docker is initializing, we will be able to run anything from Supabase. Make sure that Docker is running. As you can see here, can I zoom in a bit? Yep. You want to see this bit in here that it's saying engine running. Docker will be running correctly, right? So I can close this because Right, I think that we are back. Apologize, guys. We've been having some technical difficulties with the streaming platform. Let me confirm for a second. Gabe, I'm just checking YouTube to see if we are back live. Yes, we are. All right, good. Well, as mentioned, apologies for this. Let's continue from where we left, which is that I was telling everyone that you need to install Docker in order to use the Supabase CLI. So I saw that Dimitris was saying, "Oh my God, Docker, one more unknown area." I know, and it might sound scary, but you don't need to know much about it. If you want to know what Docker is essentially a way to run software, to run programs in a very specific environment that has been predefined. So imagine that I'm trying to run a program on my machine, and then somebody else tries to run that program on a different machine that it has a different operating system, different hardware, everything is different. There is a chance that something might not work as expected. What Docker is doing is it's simulating the same environment in every single machine where it runs. So the Supabase team has predefined an environment, an image of Docker that's saying, all right, Supabase runs on this specific setup. With Docker, we simply then we simulate that specific setup using the Supabase image that they created. All right. So we need to install Docker for using the CLI. As I mentioned, just look for Docker Desktop in Google. Look for installing the Docker Desktop application, either Mac, Windows, or Linux. And then if you want to run it always in the background, it's up to you. In my case, I like to only spin up Docker whenever I need it. So in this case, now I have it open and it's running all right, which means that we can now start playing around with the Supabase CLI. Yay! Now, the first thing that I'm going to need to deploy this function, I want to deploy this function so we can start using it, is that I need to log in to Supabase with the CLI. So then we're going to have permissions to deploy this. So I'm going to run pm Supabase. Let's check all the commands that we have. And you're going to see that there are commands about logging in and logging out, like that. There's probably also who am I, but I don't see it. So let's log in. Let's do pm Supabase login. Hello from Supabase. Press enter to open the browser and log in automatically. So let's hit enter. I'm already logged in the browser, which is nice, handy. Now I get here this code. So let's copy this and let's go back to our terminal and let's paste this verification code like that. Nice. All right, so now we are logged in. Look at that. Yay. Which means that we can, for example, pm Supabase. Let's just list the projects. So let's do pm Supabase projects list. And I can see that I have two projects. Yes, expected. If I go to Supabase, you can see that I got two different projects. One is a project that we have for testing internally, and then this Wized Stream Supabase, which is the project that we've been using for all these live streams. And we can see them here. Nice. Which means that we can deploy the function. Yay, let's do that. So let's do pm Supabase functions. And in here, we can see that we've got a bunch of commands. We got delete, deploy, download, list, new, or serve. So in this case, if we wanted to delete a specific function, we can do it. If we want to deploy a function, we can do that as well, which is what I want to do now. We can also download a function if for some reason you are not using GitHub or something to store that function and you want to pull the source code of that function to a new device, you can do that by downloading the function to your local environment. We can also list the available functions and we can create new functions and we can serve the functions locally. But for now, let's deploy this. So let's do functions deploy. And in this case, I want to deploy the hello world function. So hello world, like that, deploy. And I have to choose now the project where I want to deploy this. So I know that our project, the one that we're using, it's Wized Stream Supabase. Nice. That's it. Simple enough. So now let's go to the dashboard for a second, and we are going to see that automatically Supabase has updated this to display this hello world function. Nice. All right. So now that we've got this hello world function, how do we use it? Right? Let's try to call that function from Wized. And how do we do that? Very simple. Let's go to Wized. I'm going to use the same project that we've been using so far, which means that I already have my Supabase instance defined as an application, and I can write requests. So let's write a new request that's going to say invoke hello world. You can call this however you want. And in this invoke hello world, I'm going to choose Supabase, and we want to look for the invoke function method. In this invoke function, essentially, what we're saying is, hey, Wized, please send a request to this Supabase endpoint. So the function name is going to be hello world. I think that it's with a dash. Is that right? Yeah, with a dash. So hello world with a dash. We need to choose the HTTP method as well. In this case, I know that we want to send a post method because these template function that Supabase created for us is expecting a payload of a name like that. You know what? Actually, let's do it even simpler. Let's simplify things and let's just do return new response like that, and let's say, hey, let's just do that like this. Okay, let's comment this out for a second, and let's deploy it again, the function, because I want to keep it simple for now. So now it's not gonna even have any body, nothing, which means that we can do simply a GET request. We don't need to specify headers. We don't need to specify a body, but we can do that, and we're gonna see how to do it later. So let's try to call this, but I'm already giving you a hint. We're gonna get an error because we need to fix one thing. But let's try it. Let's refresh the page just in case, and let's call the function. And we are going to see that we get a server error 500. Oh, what's happening? The reason why this happens is because this function that we've got in here is not ready to be used from the browser because we are not handling CORS, the dreaded CORS. We need to handle it. So I actually already I was already expecting this, and Supabase already expects this to happen. There is a dedicated guide here on how to implement core support for invoking functions from the browser, which is what we're doing with Wized. And in the case, what we need to do is inject course headers in the request to make sure that when an options request is sent from the browser, the server endpoint knows that it has to return the proper headers. So let's copy this. Let's paste it somewhere in here like that. And now let's also do this. If the request method is options, which is the way that course works, we're going to return a response okay with the course headers. So let's do that. Let's put it here at the top like that. And that's it. Actually, we also need to add the course headers in the headers. So in the response, this one that we've created, let's open this. Let's put headers and let's do course headers like that. And why am I not getting formatting? Let's format things. Nice. Great. So now that we've got course headers properly defined, let's deploy the function again. Let's deploy the function. Stream Supabase deployed. Nice. And now let's go back to Wized and let's try to run this again. And we should see that now the data is returning. Hey, woo. Okay, so all this setup, all these different steps to reach to this point where we are saying hello. Okay, but now from here, everything gets easier. I promise. All right. So, first of all, there's one thing that I want to show you, and it's that in Supabase, we can go to the Edge function section, we can see our functions, and we can open the functions because Supabase allows us to see the logs for the functions. We can see when a function has been invoked, like that, and what was returned from the function. So we can see all the different logs that from of the data that was sent to the function and the data that was returned from the function, which is very handy when you're debugging things. We also can check for console logs that happen. Look at this. So here we've got a log, hello from functions. We've got another log, this, hello from functions, hello from functions. And the reason is because if you add console logs in your functions, like in here, these console logs will appear in this logs tab. It's also very convenient for debugging. Let's imagine that there's something that it's not working as you want, and you want to see the state of the function at some point. You can simply just put a console log. That's it. You call the function, you check the logs tab in here, and you can see what was called, web moment, the message. You can also see more things. It gives you all the data that you might need to know. Very handy, like that. All right. So let's remember that this is a Node, a Dino environment. And Dino doesn't work exactly like a Node, like, for example, how you would install NPM dependencies. So how do we do that? Because the good thing of Supabase Edge functions is that we have now full control of installing whatever we want, running any kind of logic we want, all securely because this is not exposed in the browser. So let's imagine that we want to use an NPM dependency. In that case, Supabase Docs has us covered. We can just follow along, and here we can say we can import npm models using the npm specifier like this. So let's imagine that we want to use some npm package. Let's do a is even, for example. And this package essentially will tell us if a number is even. This is the stupidest package that I've seen in my life, but it's funny. So if we want to use this npm package, what we can do is do this, like that. So let's grab this, let's come here, and let's do import is even from, and we do npm colon is even, and we also specify the version of it. And in this case, the version is version 1. So we're going to do is even add 1, like that. And if we do this, now we can console log if something is even, for example. So let's try to do that. Let's do console log is even, like that. And we should see if it's true or false. Let's deploy this. Boom. And now if we call the function again, let's call the function like that. And we check the logs, repeat the logs. Now you can see how these npm package has been imported from Supabase, and it has been injected in the function, and it has run it. It has output true in this case, and it has done the console log. All of that without even installing this, because in Dino you don't really install packages, you just define them, and Dino handles the rest of importing the package, caching it, and including it in the deploy. Great. So anytime that you wanted to include npm modules, just come here, look at this, do an npm colon prefix, and you can use any npm module that you want. You can also use Node.js APIs in case that you need them. That might be the case. Or you can also use JSR, which is Dino's own um, JavaScript registry, how they call it, where they also publish packages. All right. Now, let's move on because there's a lot of things I want to talk about. How do we inject secrets? Because remember that this is a secure environment. This is running on a server. So probably you want to inject some API tokens, some secrets, something that you want to consume. Could be, for example, a Stripe API key, because maybe you want to perform some Stripe API calls. Maybe it's, I don't know, some analytics API key. Then maybe it's some JWT validation secret, whatever. You can store any kind of secret. So in this case, let's go here on the left. You're going to see that there's the secrets tab. And in this case, I've already created a test secret, but let me remove it. Let's just do this. By default, when you create a new project and you start inspecting the edge functions, you're going to see that Supabase injects 4 different default secrets. These ones: the Supabase URL, Supabase anon key, Supabase service role key, and Supabase DB URL. All of these can help you in the case that you want to interact with Supabase directly from the edge functions, which I'm going to show you in a second. But essentially, Supabase URL contains the URL from the project. The anon key, it's the public exposable key. The service role key, it's a private key that allows us to query the database without any restrictions. So it doesn't matter if there's any row level security, anything, we can bypass all the restrictions. And then the database URL is in the case that if you wanted to connect directly with the database, which we don't need in this case. So we can add a secret from here, which is simple. We could just simply say test and value 1234. Or in the case that you wanted to do it from the CLI, there's also an option to do it, just for you to know. You simply do pm Supabase secrets. And in that case, you're going to see that you've got a bunch of options like listing the secret, setting a secret, or unsetting a secret. But let's set it from here. I've done test equals to 1, 2, 3, and 4, like that. Now, how do we use that in the function? Let's go back here to the documentation, which I lost. Hold on. Where's my documentation? Supabase edge functions docs. Thank you. Managing environment variables. So the way that you retrieve an environment variable in a Supabase function is by using these dino.env.get and then the name of the environment variable, which in this case we call it test. So let's go back here, and instead of returning from here this hey, let's imagine that we are very unsecure and we want to use these secrets. So let's call this secret in this case, and this will be dino.env.get then test, like that. Uppercase, it's case sensitive. So in this case, it's test uppercase. If we do this and we respond with the secret, now if we deploy this and we call it from Wized, you're going to see that, look at this, we can access this value. We can access this private secret that right now we are returning to the browser, but it should be a secret. So this could be anything. It could be, as I mentioned, a Stripe API key. In the case that, for example, you wanted to do something with Stripe here in the server, up to you. All right, great. Now, how do we query the database? Because one of the things that you probably want to do from an edge function is do some logic. For example, get the user, and then from here, maybe you want to check if the user has X or Y or Z, and depending on that, do something with the database and return that data. That could be some value use case. So in that case, what we want to do is initialize the Supabase client here in the function. The way that we do it, let's go back again to the documentation. We can create the client using the Supabase npm. They use that from JSR, but we could potentially also use it from npm. Essentially, we import this. Let's do it. And we can call this create client to initialize the Supabase client that allows us to do any kind of operations. So in this case, let's do actually, we can just check from here. We can do Supabase client here, Supabase client. And as you can see, the way that we initialize the Supabase client is by getting the Supabase URL and the Supabase anon key, which these are injected by default by Supabase in the Edge function secrets. It's very convenient because now we've got a Supabase client. Very simple. So let's do something as simple as getting the user like that. Or no, let's do it even more simple. Instead of doing the anon key, which is the anonymous key, let's use the service role key that allows us to query the database doing with no limits. Doesn't matter any if we have any role level security, we can bypass that. So let's imagine that we want to query something. For example, we want to get everything from a database, from a table. Let's go to our table editor. Yeah, it's all good. And let's imagine that we want to get everything from the cars table. All we need to do, we can check it from here. We can perform a query using the Supabase client and doing await supabase.from cars in this case, and we can simply select everything. That would be a very simple example. So let's try that. Let's copy it. Let's put it in here. Let's not get the user. Let's get all cars. Cars like that. So in that case, cars like this, and we can check if the data is right or wrong by checking this error in here. If there is an error, it means that the query failed for some reason. So we probably want to do something. So we could do error. We could, for example, console log the error like that. Yeah, why not? And then we could also return a new response, which conveniently Copilot suggestion to be this one. All right, but if there's no error, then there's going to be some data. And in that case, I want to return that data. So let's do that. Super simple. Let's just comment this out. I don't care about this. I don't care about this. I do care about this and the data, which in this case, we want to JSON stringify, not the secret, but the data like that. And also we want to pass the content type to be application JSON because it's some JSON data like that. All right, let's try that. Let's see what happens. So here, let's open this. Let's call it. Oh, right. Hold on. We need to deploy this. And I see that there's a question from the matrix. Should it? Let's clear this. Let's come here. Let's run it again. And we've got a server error. Let's see. Server error. Oh, yeah, because it's not Supabase, it's Supabase client. I need to enable linting to avoid these kind of things. I don't know why, but linting is not working. Should have checked that. Let's deploy it again. Let's try to call it. And we've got a success. Look at that. All right, so what's happened is essentially this. We sent a request to the Edge function. The Edge function has initialized the Supabase client using the built-in secrets that Supabase injects using the Supabase URL and the service role key that it's an admin permission. And then we have used the Supabase client to query the cars table, selected everything. We also checked for errors. There were no errors. The data was correct. So we returned a response to the client with the data like this. Nice. And hold on, because I closed this. Gabe, you said that Demetrius had a question, but I don't see the question. Can you help me? All right. Why would we need a function with Wized? Nice. Okay, let's do a comparison because one of the things that Yeah, one of the things that you can do with Wist, for example, is running requests on the server. For example, if you wanted to call Stripe directly from Wist, what happens in that case is usually what you do is you define a secret, and that secret, so general, you come here, you define a secret, and that secret could be like Stripe access key or like Stripe API key, and you do 1 2 3 4, right? That's possible. And then you maybe want to do a request with a REST request, and you use that secret as the authorization header. That's something that you can do. And essentially, what then will happen is that Wist will be running that function on the server exactly as what it happens with Supabase edge functions. So Wist secrets work in a very similar manner to Supabase's edge functions. But if your project is built with Supabase, there are some goodies. So there are some things that you benefit of running them not in Wist, but in Supabase's edge functions. One of the benefits, you just saw it, is that you can interact with the Supabase client directly from Supabase. It's very convenient. Not only that, let me show you. We can also, for example, implement authentication. So let me change this client. You're going to see this. Let me change this client to be the anon key, which means that now if I try to query the cars again, let's try to deploy this. Now the row level security will be preserved, will be respected, which means that if I try to call this, I'm going to get an error. Let's do invoke hello world. I'm going to get an error. Am I not? Hold on. Maybe I lifted the row level policy and enroll. I should see this. Let's deploy this again for a second. Anon key. Let's refresh. Let's call it. As you can see now, this request is coming empty. Why did that happen? Is because Supabase is respecting row level security. Supabase is right now not knowing that there's any user logged in. So when I try to query this with an anon key, not the admin key, now this row level security is preventing me from reading the data. But let's remember that we've got some row level security implemented so users can retrieve their own cars, which means that, for example, we can log in the user using the Supabase access token that is automatically sent by Wist. And if we do that, look at this, we can simply grab this logic here. Let's try to get the user, get the user. And now here, what we're doing is what we are parsing the authorization token like that. And we are telling the Supabase client, hey, I want you to log in using the access token from the user. And when that happens, let's deploy this again. Supabase will be smart enough to say, all right, so this request is coming from this user who is logged in, and I'm logged in with a user here. It's coming from this user, which means that I can successfully retrieve the cars that belong to that user. Hold on, I'm getting an error. Token, request, auth header, Supabase client, auth, get user, token. Do this for a second. Let's deploy this again. And by the way, guys, I will need to leave in 1 minute because I have a hard stop today and we will have to continue the next live stream. I might not be able to show you this, but we can pick it up from here the next day. Uncat syntax error, identifier data has been declared. Oh, yeah, data. Like that. Let's try this again because I just want to confirm this. Deployed. Let's refresh. Let's run this. And come on. Why you do this to me? Error as well. User error. I will have to leave in 10 seconds. I'm getting some pressure here. All right, this is deployed. We're still getting some errors. Okay, so let's do one thing. Because I have a hard stop now, and we're going to end this now. So what I want to do is on the next Friday, we're going to pick it up from here because there's still more things that I want to talk about as functions. And I can also show you this example working properly. Right. So if you're watching this now, thank you for staying. Although we had some technical issues, I appreciate that. If you're watching this in the future, if you want to continue seeing things all related to Wized and Supabase as functions, look for the next part, the part number 5, where we are going to continue this and finish explaining all the different all the different features. So that's it. Thank you. I'm sorry for ending this abrupt, but I really have a hard stop. So see you next Friday. Thank you, everyone.